And so the simple frame was I was asking myself, how could I take what I know how to do and help, an order of magnitude more entrepreneurs? And that has become the sort of fire, the seed for what day one is what we're building day one to be.
Welcome to the My Future Business Show, where we get you in front of your best audience and keep you there. Not only are we interviewing the biggest names in business to help you become even more successful, we're inviting you to book your spot on the show to help you grow your business. So at the end of the call, make sure you fill in the interview application form at myfuturebusiness.com/interviews. Hi, and welcome back to the My Future Business Show. It's Rick Nuske. I'm your host, and I'm also the luckiest person on this planet to be able to host the show and talk with incredibly talented individuals who are making a difference in their world for those around them. And just want to say thank you for all your wonderful feedback. It's great knowing that the show is making a difference for you. Now, with all that being said, welcome to the show, Andrew Hutton.
Rick, thanks so much for having me. Excited to be here.
Yes, now for those who don't know much about Andrew, you absolutely soon will. He is the founder of a organisation called Day One, and we are going to be talking about a whole host of entrepreneurial related topics. But before we do that, Andrew, it's usual for us to stop and talk a little bit about founders as the individuals themselves away from the business. I'm wondering if you could, start off telling us where you're located in the world.
Absolutely. I am here in Brooklyn, New York. Been a New Yorker since 2012 or so getting up to my 10-year mark milestone. And I've been here through most of my career transitions from a consultant to the startup world to now in the last just under a year now launching Day One.
Fantastic. Now, we often like to talk about the private life in terms of any recreational pursuits that you have. Do you enjoy sports? Do you do anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Honestly, I sports are a fun, big part of it. I feel in the sort of pandemic life that we're hopefully nearing the tail end of. It's been there was that time over the summer where everything shut down, and then when things came back, it was it's been a good reprieve, if you will, to sort of rally around and sort of have an escape. But yeah, I love to get outside here in the city. It's always fun to even just walk around the block and just sort of see all the the dynamism of the city and what's happening even in my part of Brooklyn or back into Manhattan, and hanging with friends and going to all the city has to offer is sort of a baseline. Although that has been much harder this year than usual.
Yeah, absolutely so, and I think that's obviously a global experience, unfortunately. Now, given that we've talked about a little bit about the pandemic, I'd like to talk about that a little while in terms of how it's affected people's entrepreneurial journeys. But I'd like to understand a little bit more about how it was that you got to Day One by, I guess, unwrapping a bit of your own entrepreneurial journey. Would you be able to share a bit about that with us?
Yeah, so my entrepreneurial journey started at the firm I was working at for about 3 or so years before launching Day One. So I had the great fortune to work at a really top tier venture capital firm in New York City called Human Ventures. And Human Ventures is a startup studio. So, a venture studio. And the business model is unique isn't the right word because there's a lot of venture studios and they're growing in popularity, but the way the model works is we would be building the startups that we eventually invested in. So it's a venture capital firm with building at its core as its core function.
Yeah.
And I was brought on in 2017 to be part of a very small build team. And so we were essentially in conceiving and designing and testing and launching startups on repeat. That was our business, our thing to do.
Yeah.
And so over the course of 2.5 or 3 or so years, I got a lot of reps in. I was able to really practice all the steps and build out my toolkit of all the entrepreneurial muscles that go into starting a business by being the player coach that was guiding these entrepreneurs and these businesses through their early days. And so it was really getting those reps that I got to see, this is how a business is built. This is what's hard about it. This is where, even very experienced founders start to, this is where their gaps shine through. And this is how different entrepreneurs do this very differently. So it didn't take long for me to come away with a somewhat unique perspective of how to help founders from 0 to 1 in the very beginning. Um, and then fast forward a little bit to the beginning of this year, it was, actually pre-pandemic. And I was just thinking about how can I take what I've been, this unique set of skills, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
and how can I help more entrepreneurs, right? I was getting a little, starting to realize that entrepreneur or venture capital, right? Venture capital as an industry, a driver of innovation, a force for good, but in the end, really only serves and really only is a fit for a small slice of the entrepreneurial pie, like a really small slice of the entrepreneurial pie.
Yeah.
And the vast majority of entrepreneurs aren't anywhere near venture capitalists. They're not in Silicon Valley. They're not in New York City. And so the simple frame was, I was asking myself, how could I take this, what I know how to do and help, an order of magnitude more entrepreneurs. And that has become the sort of fire, the seed for what Day One is what we're building Day One to be.
Yeah, I've been looking at your journey on your website, and there's some great feedback on there, and you're doing some great work. Now, I often think about this. I think, can a lifelong employee become a successful entrepreneur? Do you think?
I absolutely think so. And it's obviously, the more ingrained you are in being great at a certain thing, yes, it's harder to then take a leap to go try something else. But here's the sort of reality that whether you're, a 22-year-old college grad or a 62-year-old, seasoned career worker,
Yep.
it's that we're not taught entrepreneurship really anywhere, whether it's in school or in our jobs. Entrepreneurship, most of the skills and most of the mindsets and the muscles that you need to be an entrepreneur are not taught anywhere. Every entrepreneur has learned them on their own. And it's and it kind of boggles my mind that,
Yeah.
even business schools, almost especially business schools, they're teaching to go back to that career and how to climb that ladder a little faster, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so no, I kind of don't think it matters whether you're 22, 32, 42, 50, anywhere
Yep.
along your career, because we're all first-time entrepreneurs are learning from scratch. Um, and you could say, a younger entrepreneur has less to unlearn. Very true. Maybe they're closer to new technology. That's exciting. But an older entrepreneur has lived experience. They know what's wrong in an industry, or they've gone through life and know problems and think, needs that need to be filled. And so really there's definitely no one spot that says this is where entrepreneurs must come from.
Yeah, there's a perspective, isn't it? It's one of those things. I love to talk about technology later on as it applies to entrepreneurship and starting a business. But we all know that when we start a business, that things do get tough, and I wonder where our mindset should be, and some of the things that we should be thinking about when things aren't going our way. What's your take on that?
My first reaction to that is entrepreneurship is going to be, in building anything new, is going to be, not only will it be a new thing for you, regardless of where you're coming from, it'll be a hard thing, and it
Yeah.
will require resilience. It's a function of the fact that you're putting something new into the world, and the world, whether it's a market or a set of customers or whatever it might be, has inertia. They don't want new things. And yes, you're trying to, the goal of an entrepreneur is to create that new thing that solves, scratches an itch, and that, people just rave about when they know it. But no, there's a lot of inertia to the world. New things don't get adopted, easily and immediately. And I've started to tell every entrepreneur, because I feel this, even not even quite a year into building Day One, that it's going to take longer than you think. And so mentally prepare for that, financially prepare for that. And yeah, it's going to be longer, which is, I think, the first thing. It's also going to have many more ups and downs than you think. And you definitely need to have, whether it's routines or the people around you to help maintain it. And yeah, it requires a lot of resilience. I also don't think it has to be quite as hard as it is, because everything I just said is about building in the wild, right? It's about this sort of, we understand that entrepreneurship is this lonely experience, but let's just maybe ask a provocative question. Does it have to be, right? Does it have to be that lonely? Can it be easier? Again, I don't think you can absolutely cannot reduce away all the difficulty of entrepreneurship. There's no way this can become a cookie cutter process,
No.
right? As much as we'd like it to be, but there are ways to kind of fill some of those gaps and at least give entrepreneurs a better shot of making it and being successful along the way.
You talked a little bit about the people around you there, and I think that's a good segue into I guess, much of the core of this call, but we'll come back to that very thing in a moment. But I'd like to ask you, Andrew, who inspires you at the moment?
Ooh, that's a great question. It's there's a lot of entrepreneurs that don't just go along with the flow. They sort of speak truth and they kind of cut past the narratives that are out there and the sort of, I don't know, the hype cycle. There's a lot of hype in entrepreneurship, and I gravitate towards folks who can sort of see past it. Honestly, it's really folks who are, you wouldn't know them, right? I'm immediately thinking of some collaborators who I've come to know in building day one because, people are so supportive. There's a few folks, again, I'm going to throw names out there. You're not going to know them. Howard Gray, Brian Dell, Jesse Morris, right?
Yep.
These are people in my kind of corner who have been along for the ride, who, when I get them on the phone, it's half therapy, half strategy session because, they speak truth. They're commiserators because they're entrepreneurs themselves. Yeah, they know the game enough to look past the hype, and it's very grounding.
That's very refreshing to hear that because, it's not necessarily these high-flying, hyped
The
up.
Elon Musks or Amazon or Jeff Bezos, like
there's other people out there, believe it or not.
Yeah, and you can take some the way Elon Musk kind of doesn't care, or the way Jeff Bezos was just so methodical and strategic, but I find, I don't know, I'm just drawn to a form of entrepreneurship and like the people doing it that are just that much more real, right? Who don't, and hype is one of the words, but it's even yes, you need to be strategic and you need to sort of brush it off and not care, but entrepreneurs are just normal people, right? The majority of us are not going to be celebrities along the way
doing extraordinary things.
No, but we can create lasting, businesses, create wealth, create impact, create, solve people's problems. And I feel, there's a new narrative for entrepreneurship that we're trying to, I think be a part of. We're not the only voices saying it.
This is wonderful. There's so many links to further conversation that I want to have with you. And going back a couple of steps with the people that you surround yourself with, you have this idea of fellowship. And I wonder how this came about and why it's so important for the things that you're doing at day one.
Yeah, it really is at the bottom so important. The idea that we're bringing together entrepreneurs to go along this journey, and it's by design, right? I thought a lot about, okay, in my days post Human Ventures, I could probably go coach some founders. I could probably go be a guru or have a roster and do that. That could be my business. And, one, I didn't like how unscalable that felt, right? I wanted to actually reach many, many more entrepreneurs, and, coaching, as important and great as coaching and therapy are, it's expensive, and models that help get more folks more access. And I think day one is that the idea of the community does drive that scalability. But ultimately, I don't know everything that you need to know as an entrepreneur. I'm a good coach is usually just good at asking the right questions and being a mirror and a sounding board. And at that, I think I'm pretty good. But if you want to, go deep with somebody who, navigated all the regulations of setting up a healthcare business, or you want to talk to somebody who's, a growth marketer who's, amazing at reaching, suburban, moms or something like that. That's not me in particular. I know enough to be dangerous, and I might, but right now I probably, but I'd say my biggest advantage is I know enough to bring the right people together, right? Let's get more people around you. And so So ultimately, the foundational idea of a fellowship is that everyone has this diverse set of experiences, and everyone has something to give, whether it's a bit of advice from their corporate career, whether it's a connection to somebody, whether it's just a bit of wisdom, or even a shoulder to cry on or brainstorm with. Bringing people together is the catalyst,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And it's the ongoing catalyst, right? If you build a relationship with somebody, not only will they help you grow inside of a 8-week program like day one,
Mm-hmm.
but they'll be with you down the road, right? It's the gift that keeps on giving. And so yeah, we know we're kind of helping people build really long lasting value and foundations when we bring them together. And fellowship is just one of the best words for it, right? Because
Yeah, I
it's
like
more
it.
than community. It's more than just a class, right? It's a fellowship.
Yeah, no, it's excellent. I've not heard it before. You often do hear community, and it's such a worn out statement, isn't it? Community.
It
Let's build a
is.
community. It's bland and boring almost.
It is, and it's because community. Well, one, you're right. It's just been overused, and 2020. The worlds that I or the circles that I follow on Twitter and the news. Community had a peak because we all lost a lot of our community. We lost a lot of our
Oh yeah,
contact and our connection,
yeah,
and so we needed to find ways to get it back. And there are a lot of builders inside and outside of Silicon Valley creating tools for communities or new communities, but there's something about having purpose, not just purpose, but functional direction
mm-hmm.
to a group of people. So we're here for a reason, right? Not just because we're the same in a certain way, or
Yeah,
have certain likes, but we have certain goals. And if you can make and if those and if the people together can achieve those goals better together than apart, then you have something special. I think then you have something worth getting into, and you can attract people, and you can attract more people and better people. And that's what we're trying to build. So it is a special type of community, but we try not to say that word because then we get lost in the shuffle.
oh yeah. When you talk about education, I also like to get the founder's perspective on how important education is, and what is your modus operandi, if you like, for educating yourself, and should it be an ongoing process?
I love that question, and it's something that I think about a lot with Day One, because as much as Day One is a functional community, a fellowship for builders, entrepreneurs building something,
Mm-hmm.
um, so much of what helps an entrepreneur be better, well, goes back to that first thought, which is everybody, the first time they build something, the first time they're a founder, is a novice every time. And so you have to go up a learning curve. And so especially for entrepreneurs, we're always learning, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're learning these skills for the first time. And then once we practice those skills, if we're going to go innovate in a new area or build something new, we have to go learn about that new thing, right? And so I'd say more so than the public writ large, entrepreneurs need to be lifelong learners, need to be curious to a fault, and it's curiosity mixed with I call it rigor, which is sort of very curious but also skeptical, right? Why is that? Must that be true, right? Let me understand what's going on here. So curious, but then not just sort of a dilettante, but very, very kind of rigorous in what they come to know and how they might do something about it. But yeah, personally, I think I found a hack, which is I get to talk with dozens of entrepreneurs, seems weekly, whether it's folks who are asking about Day One or coming through our application pipeline, or just I continue to recruit mentors into our program, and
Mm-hmm.
so I have my own version of Day One in the building of Day One, which is bringing my own fellowship together, and I say all that, but then I also know that I struggle with being an open and honest learner, right? I
Yeah.
think you know the caveat to everything I just said is that an entrepreneur has to be a believer and has to sort of put their blinders on and say, I know this thing to be true. And that's pretty dangerous, right?
Mm.
And I fall into that sometimes. I'm like, okay, I must be the kind of owner of this passion and this vision, where it's much more important to sort of be the, not naive, but a kind of, like I said, curious person who wants to know, right? And so
Yeah.
instead of just living in the status quo. So I think it is people and conversations are the best ways to learn, and having more and interesting ones, and having uh, and leaving space, not being the talker but the listener as often as possible. I don't know. There's a book out there that's probably good, or an article, but part of what that goes into, again, that's kind of a belief that I've cultivated over the last 6 to 9 months is there is more than an overload of written and recorded information out there.
Oh yeah.
And it's much more about how you, and we're contributing to it. So, but I'm not going to get too upset about it, but
Hmm.
it's much more important to digest it and bat it around with people, and internalize it and put it into practice. So
I think that's a great dovetail, because you talked about being curious and willing to take risks and all these things, but then what about application, and what about accountability? How does that play a part in your fellowship?
it's yeah, I appreciate you taking me there, because the learning is 80% putting what you've maybe learned, I use air quotes around that, but in
Hmm.
terms of what you've heard, or sort of understood, and putting it into practice, especially when it's a properly new thing, whether it's, again, that new skill for you or a new problem you're solving. Yeah, you have to be doing it, you have to be practicing. And the it is pedagogy. The pedagogy behind our program is to take some the guesswork away, in terms of what to do next. A lot of entrepreneurs find themselves in either analysis paralysis or uncertainty, and so they don't do as much as they should. But entrepreneurs really should be engines of doing and learning, therefore, by doing. And that's what we get founders to do inside of day one. We take away a lot of the guesswork and say, we're just going to guide you through the steps that we know you need to do,
Mm.
and we know will be foundational for your business. And we know, as you do them, and do them in community with others, and ask both good and dumb questions, and interact with people who are at your same stage and people who are a few stages ahead of you, that you're going to learn. And it's the best way to do it. I remember back to my grad school learning design thinking for the first time, and the only thing I remember is the studios where we put it into practice, right?
Absolutely.
Um, and all the things I learned along the way as a consultant and then a builder. It stacks up over time, and yeah, it feels like my job is just to get people to do the things that I know they need to do, and reduce cognitive dissonance or load
Yep.
when people are not sure what to do next, or just help them take that next step. It really starts to breed a flywheel, right? It creates a kind of compounding effect.
There's something that I'm taking from this. It's an uplifting environment with like-minded individuals trying to achieve an outcome. They're there to be helpful, but it's also a safe environment. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. So much of learning, and again, I mean, it's a fundamental essence of entrepreneurship that you're going to fail. If you were only doing things that you knew would succeed, you wouldn't be an entrepreneur, because you wouldn't be doing anything new.
No.
So you absolutely are about to fail, and it's only folks who understand that failure is not fatal, and I mean, like, really understand it, that they then take those risks. So I mean, the first week, the first module in our program is getting people to ship something very simple, a little essay about themselves, but get them to get it out there. And it's actually a zero chance of failure, but we want to get folks practicing the motion of launching and putting things out, so
I'm
that,
feeling it.
and feeling it. And it's not failure. They literally cannot fail, but
Mm,
they might
mm.
have a few crickets, right? It might not feel like what they thought it would feel like, but they need to get over these humps of what are people going to think? Will anyone like it? What's it going to be like? And you just start. And so, that's foundational to our program. And yeah, we create a safe space inside the program. We create, the folks, that community, that fellowship of fellows,
Mm-hmm.
reaches outside the program, and everybody is cheering each other on. It's like having your own, yeah, it's like having your team and your cheerleading squad all around you, as you build.
I
It's
like
which
that. I like that idea of shipping your idea. I mean, that concept is not new, but actually getting that done, and then ultimately you're contributing to, I guess you'd call it perception management.
Oh, absolutely. It's been kind of bantied about a bit, maybe more so in this year than I've ever seen it before. But yeah, by building in public, you both create momentum and create accountability for yourself, but you also create fans, or you might create customers, or you get feedback, and it nothing good happens on the safe side of shipping that thing. Nothing is learned, nothing is earned, and again, fundamental to entrepreneurship, all the values on the other side of that, on the other side of a conversation with somebody you don't know, on the other side of putting that thing out there. And so really day one is about getting folks to ship and interact. That's it.
That
I
is
didn't
it.
say that's it. There's a
Yeah.
whole lot to it, but
Oh,
to distill
absolutely.
it down,
Yeah. Yeah.
ship,
Absolutely.
interact.
I've been loving this call, Andrew. Thank you so very much for opening up. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the type of entrepreneurs that the program would attract, and I ask this because I think to myself, if somebody's an early stage entrepreneur, they're in the startup phase where they're starting to plan and put together a business idea, how important is, I guess, planning if they're that person? Is that the type of entrepreneur that you work with?
Yeah, it's a really great question. The first thing I that powers me, that fuels me, is to create a space for entrepreneurs of many types, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to be fair, that's not necessarily good executional advice. It's all about focus. It's all about like having one customer that you serve. But part of our mission is to be a place where not just the founder of the Silicon Valley TV show can
Mm-hmm.
go, right? You don't have to be in a hacker house in Silicon Valley to be a day one founder. So um, and I'd say the biggest thing that means is you don't have to just be building a technology rocket ship, right? You don't have to just be building a new internet to be a fit. It's day one is really here for all the different types of entrepreneurs, whether they're building a coaching business or an agency and it's a services business, whether it's a physical product, whether it's food or a new suitcase, whether it's technology, but maybe you're not intending to grow that big or that fast. Technology has, you can build micro SaaS, you can build all sorts of different ways, a marketplace. There's really every kind of business. Um, and the reason why that diversity fits at day one is because at the earliest stage, at the seed stage, and I mean that literally, at the very inception,
Mm-hmm.
at the gestation, everyone has to do the same stuff, and as you get
The
further down
fundamentals.
the fundamentals. And as you go down the road, there's a divergence. Yeah, someone building a healthcare business will have a very different activity a year in than somebody building a food business. That's true, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at day one, it's actually all the same, and I promise that. In fact, it's better together because there's a specialness in having different perspectives from healthcare to CPG, applying to collaborating together and helping each other. So so the first answer is yeah, we're really here to celebrate all different types of entrepreneurship, whether it's venture backed or not. I would say we specialize in helping folks who are new to entrepreneurship, right? Who might have storied careers, might have superpowers in another industry, but are just getting their feet wet when it comes to entrepreneurship. Because again, those fundamentals, if you haven't learned them, it's important to come to a safe space that's thoughtful about teaching them.
Mm-hmm.
To be fair, here's a lesson I learned from Human Ventures, right? So at Human Ventures, we were working with exceptional founders, multi-time founders, founders with $100 million exits under their belts, founders with multiple startups under their belts. They needed everything that we offered them. Every single one of these exceptional founders needed me to be a confidant, an accountability partner, pushing them, teaching them things, getting them to do uncomfortable stuff. It honestly doesn't matter. And I saw us at Human Ventures pass up working with some first-time founders, some younger founders who have gone on to build amazing things.
Mm.
And it was a really firsthand kind of lesson that to not underestimate people, not bet against folks who are new to entrepreneurship, but also everybody needs this. Everybody needs this. And we're new. We at some point, I see day one being an institution like Techstars or Y Combinator. That's kind of grandiose talk, but
Mm-hmm.
to the point where there's every single founder coming up, whether you're a new first-time founder or just a veteran, will recognize that you need to start with a fellowship, a family at your back, right? And
Yeah.
so it's there's a lot to that. I
Oh,
could
it's
definitely.
very difficult, very difficult to unwrap lots about this program. I do have another question for you, if you don't mind. I was wondering,
Please.
Andrew, what do you think, given the state of the world and the wonderful technology that we have available to us, what do you think technology and entrepreneurship, what do you think their relationship will be over the next decade?
Yeah, I think it's gonna. What we're gonna see is here's the frame that I usually take into this. It's that technology, there will continue to be sort of game changing front edge leading technology, like the rockets going to Mars
Mm-hmm.
and AI and things like that. Those will continue to be developed, and that's important for pushing our world forward, right? But for the vast majority of entrepreneurs and vast majority of tech, it's that we're in this thing, you'd call it the deployment phase. You'd say technology for most software has developed and matured to a spot where it can be applied to pretty much every industry.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're living in a moment where take the most backward looking industries, take the most paper driven process, software will go eat that. And software eating the world is a almost decade old kind of statement, but
Mm.
it's no longer. There's something important about the fact that it's gone from being novel and kind of part of the rocket ship to being now part of this sort of kind of expanse across the whole economy.
The
And
fabric
so
of business.
a fabric of business, right? And so I think there's two major impacts that's going to happen. One is you're going to be able to create a business solving the most minute problem using software and have it be a legitimate real business, because there's so many ways to deploy or to reach customers in new ways. There's so many ways to build that software very cheaply and very efficiently. So you're going to see every single aspect of business get taken over by software. You're also going to see these platforms come up. They already exist, whether it's Shopify for e-com or
The list
um,
goes on, doesn't it?
yeah, I mean, there's every single type of marketplace that allows entrepreneurs to sell their goods that they're creating in their kitchens to you're basically going to have this Cambrian explosion of small entrepreneurs who do their thing, whether it's as a side hustle or just a solo entrepreneur, or the beginnings of a small to big startup in the proper sense. So, I mean, I hope that what technology has enabled is that entrepreneurship becomes a very common thing,
Oh, that's
right?
fantastic. Yeah, I agree. I think, I remember the days where, um, things weren't just the way they are today. There was no smartphones. The world was a very different place. It's become so much more efficient, hasn't it?
And we're a long way there. You're totally right. It is night and day in terms of how people coming not just out of Stanford or that's Ivy Leagues want to be entrepreneurs, but it's everywhere. It's Shark Tank. But it's gonna continue to go, and people are gonna find. I hope it comes back to education and how we educate folks at the grade school level, right? Much less college and beyond, right? I hope
Fantastic.
that the fabric of the career journeys we go on start to look more palatable to people taking time to go build something and then going back in to learn a different industry and then coming back out to try something new. It's it is kind of a brave new frontier for the fabric of our honestly our economy.
It's a very
it's
exciting.
accelerating in 2020. It's 2021 right now, but it accelerated last year and it's going to continue to accelerate for certain.
Time is flying. I tell you what, that was a year that I'm not too worried about saying goodbye to. This has been a hand in glove conversation, Andrew, and I'm very privileged, and as are the My Future Business audience, to hear some of your insights. Thank you very much for sharing. Now, at the pointy end of the call, I'd love to share a little bit about how people can get involved with Day One. What is the process, and how are they going to find you?
Absolutely. So easiest way is if you search for us, you'll find us, but joinday1.com is where we live on the web. And we are running cohorts. So it's a cohort-based model, which means we group fellows together into a start date and run an 8-week program, after which you're an alumni for life, and you're in the family, and we are building community and services and resources. But the 8-week program is the sort of flagship for Day One and for this entrepreneurial and being the launch pad for entrepreneurial journeys. And we run these programs, these cohorts, about once a quarter right now. And we'll likely speed that up, but maybe not until the tail end of 2021. And so we're launching a program this month at the end of January. We're going to be launching another one in the middle of quarter 2 and onward into quarter 3 and towards the end of this year. And so the last piece, I guess, is that it's an application process. We are being very intentional about the community, actually the members of our fellowships. And so it's a pretty simple process to apply. It's always a free application. But we're here for serious fellows and founders, right? Folks who really want to invest in themselves to both level up as well as build something, or try it out, or feel out entrepreneurship. And so we're much more focused on potential and ambition than pedigree. We focus on folks at the very beginning. So it doesn't matter if your idea is good or bad. We're here to help you make it better. And might that mean dropping a bad idea? Yes. Hope that, or accelerating a good idea, of course.
Of course. No, it's one of these ventures. If you've not seen or visited joinday1.com, make sure you do so, because if you're a startup entrepreneur and you're looking to get involved in a fellowship like this, I'm sure if you've listened to this call, you're very excited, as I am, about this opportunity. And with that, I will be making joinday1.com link available to you below this post. No matter where you see or hear this call, you'll find that link back to Andrew and his team. And with that all being said, Andrew, thank you so very much for spending some time with me on the My Future Business show today.
Rick, thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thanks for joining us today. If you enjoyed the call, then make sure to subscribe, leave a comment, share us with your friends, and book your spot on the show at myfuturebusiness.com/interviews. And if you're looking for solutions that will help grow your business, then visit myfuturebusiness.com/shop.